The splash was quick, almost casual, the way someone might rinse off a dusty table. But this time, it wasn't a table. It was Lily's laptop, her world, her voice, her connection to school, her friends, her art. I heard the crowd gasp before I saw the sparks, tiny, frightening flickers leaping from the soaked keyboard. Lily didn't scream. She didn't even move. She just stared, frozen, watching the screen flicker and die as if a part of her had been unplugged too. Mrs. Thornton stood over her like a queen punishing a servant, arms crossed, expression smug. She shouldn't be online anyway, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Kids need real life, not screens. Her voice was soaked in the kind of superiority that doesn't just judge, it punishes. I pushed through the crowd, heart thudding, fists clenched, but too late to stop what had already been done. The smell of burning plastic lingered in the air. Lily looked up at me with wide, blinking eyes, trembling like a startled deer. And for one horrible moment, no one said a word. Not the parents. Not the kids. Just silence, shame, and the sickening knowledge that this wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. A grown woman had destroyed my disabled daughter's lifeline and called it discipline. What kind of person does that? What kind of community lets her? Before the incident, before the sparks, the water, the shame, our lives in Willowbrook Estates had actually begun to feel safe. Almost soft, like the edges of our days had finally been sanded down after years of sharp corners. We had moved in just 8 months earlier, hoping the quiet, gated streets and neatly trimmed hedges would give Lily the peace and safety she deserved. The brochure talked about community, togetherness, a perfect place to grow. For a while, I believed it. Lily is 12, diagnosed with autism at 3, nonverbal by 4, but that never meant she couldn't communicate. She just did it differently. Her laptop was her voice, literally. It had the speech software she used to talk to the world, the digital paint apps she used to sketch things she could never say aloud, and the carefully bookmarked lessons that let her learn on her own terms. She didn't fit the neighborhood kid mold. She wasn't riding bikes or knocking on doors to play hide and seek. But she had her world, and in it she thrived. Our days had a rhythm. Mornings began with her waking me up by tapping on her tablet, showing me a digital smiley face. I'd make tea while she logged into her Zoom classes, headphones snug, eyes focused. During breaks, she'd draw endless swirls of galaxies, forests, animals with wide, curious eyes. Her therapist once said Lily had an emotional IQ that leaks through her artwork. I knew exactly what she meant. Every time I looked at her screen, it felt like I was being let into her mind, and it was beautiful. She met Jacob on our second week here. He was a quiet kid, too, a year older than Lily with shaggy brown hair and a love for video games and bugs. He saw her drawing at the park one day and asked what program she was using. Lily didn't speak, just turned her screen so he could see. That was enough. From that moment on, they were inseparable. They played Minecraft together, traded Pokemon cards, and once built an elaborate cardboard computer fort in our garage. Jacob never treated her like she was different. He just met her where she was. The neighbors, at first, seemed welcoming. Friendly smiles. A couple of casserole drop-offs. Small talk about weather and school zones. Most people adored Lily. They called her so sweet, so talented, so quiet. Some even asked if she could draw something for their grandkids. She became, in many ways, the community's gentle mystery, a soft, polite presence who rarely spoke but always smiled. And people love mystery as long as it behaves the way they expect. Then there was Mrs. Thornton. She lived 2 houses down. Widow, former schoolteacher, president of the HOA's Child Enrichment and Safety Committee, which she seemed to treat like a moral crusade. From the very beginning, her eyes lingered on Lily longer than the others. Not with curiosity, not with warmth, with something colder, like she was trying to solve a problem no one else saw. The first comment came during a neighborhood cleanup. "She's on that computer a lot," Mrs. Thornton said, nodding toward Lily, who was sitting on the curb drawing butterflies on her tablet. "Don't you think children need more real-world interaction?" I smiled politely. "She's interacting plenty, just differently." Her lips tightened. Well, in my day, we didn't need screens to feel seen. I brushed it off, chalked it up to generational disconnect. But then there were the other moments. Small, cutting remarks. Too much screen time makes kids antisocial. You know the light from those things damages their eyes. What does she even do on that thing all day? She never said Lily's name. Just that child or your daughter. Always with a tone of judgment dressed in faux concern. Still, I tried to be kind. Tried to explain. I even invited her over once during a weekend art display Lily had organized on our porch, dozens of drawings hung with clothespins, each with a little typed caption. Mrs. Thornton looked at them briefly, nodded, and said, "At least it's not TikTok." I remember laughing awkwardly and wishing I hadn't. At the time, I didn't know those glances, those comments, were the slow build to something uglier. I thought she'd just lose interest and move on to someone else. I didn't know she'd already chosen her target. I didn't know she was waiting for the right moment to strike. It started with a note, folded neatly and taped to our front door one Tuesday morning, just above the welcome wreath Lily had made from dried leaves and paper daisies. The note was printed, of course it was, and read like a newsletter headline, Concern: Children using electronic devices in shared spaces. As part of our community's commitment to healthy childhood development, we kindly ask all residents to ensure their children are engaging with the environment and peers, not just screens. Fresh air builds stronger minds than Wi-Fi ever could. Mrs. Thornton, HOA Child Enrichment and Safety Committee, it didn't mention Lily by name. It didn't have to. No one else in the neighborhood was using a laptop at the park benches or bringing a tablet to the courtyard garden. No one else relied on a screen the way Lily did just to participate in daily life. At first, I tried to take the high road. I sent a calm, clear email to the HOA addressing the note. My daughter is autistic and uses her laptop as a learning tool and communication device. It is not recreational, it is essential. Please be mindful that visible differences in behavior or tools do not equal misbehavior. The response I got wasn't from the HOA board, it was from Mrs. Thornton directly. We're all doing our best to raise well-adjusted children, Michelle, but excessive screen use leads to isolation. I'm just trying to help before things get worse for your daughter. Worse? Lily had never been happier since we'd moved. She was thriving in school, smiling more, connecting with Jacob, and even getting braver in social settings. But to Mrs. Thornton, none of that seemed to matter. Her idea of helping looked more like quiet sabotage. That week, she began to insert herself more directly. At the park, I caught her watching Lily from a nearby bench, arms crossed, eyes squinting with disapproval. Once, Lily accidentally dropped her stylus on the grass, and Mrs. Thornton immediately rushed over. "You know, this is public property," she said with an edge in her voice. "Not a private classroom." "She's doing her homework," I replied, walking over calmly. "Like most kids do these days, digitally." "She's doing herself a disservice," she muttered, picking up the stylus and reluctantly handing it to Lily like it was contaminated. Lily didn't look up. She hated confrontation. Another time, I overheard her cornering Jacob near the mailboxes. "You're a smart boy," she was saying in her syrupy sour tone. "You don't want to get too wrapped up in all that screen nonsense, especially not with girls like her. You could be leading, not following." Jacob told me about it later, confused and upset. "I don't get it. Why does she act like Lily's doing something wrong? She's just herself." Because people like Mrs. Thornton didn't understand different. And what they don't understand, they control, or try to. Soon, the microaggressions turned into formal complaints. I received an email from the HOA. "We've received concerns about a child using electronic devices in community seating areas for extended periods. Please be mindful of common space etiquette and consider limiting device use to private property." I stared at the screen in disbelief. Device use? Common space etiquette? Lily wasn't blasting music or playing games. She was sitting quietly under a tree sketching a red fox with layered brushstrokes. She was in her world. She wasn't bothering anyone except, apparently, Mrs. Thornton. I replied with a detailed breakdown of Lily's needs again. No reply. Days later, Lily came home upset, her hand shaking. I asked what happened, but she didn't want to talk. She typed on her laptop. She said I'm rude. She said screens are poison. That night, I found another note on our door. A loving parent knows when to say no to technology. For her sake, try it. No signature this time, but I knew that handwriting. Thin, neat looping, just like her emails. Just like the woman who once told me that a real mother teaches resilience, not screen dependence. I started keeping a record. Every note, every message. I took photos when I saw her watching Lily at the park. I documented the HOA emails and even began asking neighbors if they'd had issues. Some hadn't noticed anything. Others had stories. One mother quietly told me that Mrs. Thornton had once demanded her son stop listening to audiobooks on his phone during a walk. She told him he was disrespecting nature, she said, rolling her eyes. She thinks the whole neighborhood is her classroom. Another dad recalled her scolding his daughter for taking selfies in front of the clubhouse garden. Called her vain. Said she was becoming one of those internet girls. My daughter cried for 2 days. Still, no one had stood up to her. She wielded her position like a shield, hiding behind community rules and child wellness rhetoric. I began to fear that something bigger was coming, that her obsession with Lily wasn't going to stop at notes or disapproving glances. And that gut feeling proved right, because within the week, the incident happened. The moment that changed everything. The moment Mrs. Thornton went from subtle cruelty to destruction. It was the kind of spring day you don't forget, not because it was particularly special, but because everything seemed normal, pleasant, deceptively peaceful. The HOA had organized a community craft and creativity day at the main pavilion by the park, an event meant to bring families together and unplug from screens, as the flyer had emphasized. I knew what that wording was aimed at. Mrs. Thornton's fingerprints were all over it. But I didn't want to keep Lily from attending. She had been working all week on a digital art project for school, an animated sequence of birds migrating through different seasons, and she'd been so excited to finish it in time. I'd promised she could use the picnic table under the shade to work quietly while other kids did their glue and glitter projects. She wore her favorite hoodie, soft blue, with little embroidered constellations, and carried her laptop case like it was made of glass. We arrived early. The tables were decorated with paper tablecloths and jars full of pipe cleaners, pom-poms, scissors, and safety glue sticks. Lily chose the far corner near the shade and carefully set up her laptop, stylus, and noise-canceling headphones. Let me know if you need anything, okay? I said, brushing her hair gently behind her ear. She nodded and typed, almost finished. Want to show Jacob later. I smiled. He'll love it. I walked a short distance away to help set up the snack table with a few other parents, still within eyesight, but giving her space. That was always the balance with Lily, protection without suffocation. For a while, things went smoothly. Kids were gluing googly eyes on paper owls, parents chatted over lukewarm coffee, and Lily worked, focused, content, tapping softly on her keyboard and dragging lines across her screen with surgical precision. Then I saw her. Mrs. Thornton, in her usual beige linen blazer, sunglasses pushed up into her tightly pulled gray bun, carrying her clipboard like a gavel. She made her rounds like a judge at a science fair, nodding approvingly at kids who were elbow-deep in macaroni art, pursing her lips at any sign of disruption. And then she saw Lily. She paused, watched. I could feel the tension snap into the air like static. She began marching toward Lily's table with slow, deliberate steps. I wiped my hands and started walking too, but I wasn't close enough, not yet. Mrs. Thornton stopped at the edge of the table and spoke, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Excuse me, young lady," she said, her tone sharp. This event was meant to encourage real creativity. Hands on, no screens. Lily didn't react. Her headphones were on, her eyes focused. She likely hadn't heard her. She was deep in flow, blending colors in a fall forest scene. Mrs. Thornton leaned in, louder this time. I said, "This is not an appropriate place for computer games." I was halfway there now, speeding up. She's not playing games, I called out, trying to defuse. She's finishing her school project. She's ignoring me, Mrs. Thornton snapped, and being incredibly disrespectful. She's wearing noise-canceling headphones. She didn't hear you. I said, now just a few feet away. She's not even acknowledging her surroundings. That's dangerous. She needs to be present with the community. She is present. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She's doing exactly what this event is for, creating. By now, a few parents had stopped what they were doing. Some of the kids were looking up. But Mrs. Thornton wasn't done. She spends every minute of her life staring at that thing. It's not healthy. Children need boundaries. This obsession with screens, it's a sickness. Her laptop is how she communicates, how she learns, how she connects. She needs to learn how to exist without it. Then, without warning, without hesitation, Mrs. Thornton reached for the water bottle on the table beside her. A tall, stainless steel thermos she always carried. She unscrewed the lid. My feet moved, but I wasn't fast enough. She raised the bottle and poured, a full stream of water splashing directly onto Lily's keyboard. The sound was instant, fizzling, popping, a short electric hiss. The screen blinked, glitched, then turned black. Lily froze. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared, unblinking, as the water dripped from her laptop's shell, pooling on the plastic tablecloth, soaking her drawings and keyboard. I rushed forward, yanked the laptop away, tilted it, tried to shake the water out. It was too late. The smell of fried circuits hit me like a slap. I looked at Lily. Her lips were parted slightly. Her hands trembled. She slowly slid off her headphones, eyes darting around, panicked, silent. And Mrs. Thornton? She stood tall, arms crossed. She shouldn't be online anyway, she said, as if that explained it all. It's for her own good. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jacob ran over from the craft station, eyes wide. What happened? Lily didn't respond. She simply typed on her phone with shaking fingers and turned the screen to me. It's gone. I turned to Mrs. Thornton, my voice low and raw. You just destroyed her schoolwork, her communication device, her lifeline. She needs a break from it, she said, coldly. I did what any responsible adult would do. Several parents gasped. One of the HOA volunteers muttered, "Oh my God," I wanted to scream, to throw something, to sob, but I held Lily's shoulders instead, grounding her. She was the priority. I carried her laptop in one hand and her in the other, leaving behind the sounds of gasps, whispers, and Mrs. Thornton's self-righteous scoffs. Back at home, Lily sat on her bed and typed, "Why would she do that?" And I had no answer, because I couldn't explain to her why some people hate what they can't control. But I could promise her this: I would fight, not just for a replacement laptop, not just for an apology, for her dignity, for her right to exist in any space, laptop, walker, voice software, and all, without being shamed or silenced. And for the first time since we moved to Willowbrook, I wasn't afraid of causing a scene, because the scene had already happened, and now the whole neighborhood had seen it. We spent the rest of that day in a haze. I dried Lily's hair, changed her clothes, wrapped her in a blanket, and placed what was left of her laptop on the kitchen table like a broken relic. She didn't say anything, not a single typed word. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't even reach for her backup tablet. Her silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. It filled every room, every hallway, like grief. That laptop had been more than a device. It had been her sketchbook, her voice, her comfort zone, her classroom. Without it, it was like someone had poured water not just on a machine, but on her spirit. That night, I sat on the couch, staring at her screenless desk. My hands ached with the need to fix something, anything. I called her school to let them know she wouldn't be attending classes the next day. I emailed her therapist. I left a message for the HOA, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, I marched straight to Mrs. Thornton's house. Not to scream, not to cause a scene, to hold her accountable. She opened the door after the second knock, dressed like nothing had happened, blouse crisp, lipstick fresh. Her expression was neutral, almost bored. "I need to speak with you," I said. My voice was flat, cold. I assumed this would happen, she said, stepping onto her porch and crossing her arms. I'm not sure what exactly you expect. I expect accountability, I replied. You damaged private property. You emotionally traumatized a disabled child. I want a written apology and payment for the replacement laptop. Her eyebrows lifted. I acted in the best interest of the community. I blinked. Excuse me, you've let your daughter become entirely dependent on that thing. You're not doing her any favors. She needs to learn how to live in the real world. That thing is how she learns, how she speaks, how she creates. You don't get to decide how my daughter functions. She was ignoring me. That's disrespectful. She wasn't ignoring you. She had headphones on. You poured water on her laptop in front of 20 people. You committed an act of aggression. Mrs. Thornton shrugged. It's not aggression if it's correction. The words landed like a slap. I took a step back. My hands trembled. I'm filing a formal complaint, I said, with the HOA and with the police if I have to. She didn't flinch. The HOA knows me. They know I have the neighborhood's best interest at heart. I doubt they'll take your side. I didn't respond. I turned and walked away, not because I was backing down, but because I was done speaking to someone who believed what she did was justified. When I got home, I wrote a letter, concise, factual, and furious. I detailed what happened, attached photos, included witness names. I CC'd every single HOA board member. The subject line read, Formal complaint against Mrs. Thornton, destruction of property and harassment of disabled minor. The next day, I got a reply. We have received your complaint and will be reviewing the matter internally. Please refrain from escalating this issue to social media or other public forums while we gather facts. That line hit like a warning disguised as professionalism. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I started documenting. I printed screenshots of every email I had ever received from Mrs. Thornton. I gathered Lily's school documentation, proving her use of assistive technology. I collected her therapist's statement about how critical that laptop was to her social and emotional development. I saved it all. Meanwhile, Lily stayed quiet. She refused to go to the park, refused to video call Jacob. She drew on paper with crayons, but her sketches were sloppy, lifeless. She didn't finish a single one. It wasn't about the laptop. It was about what had been taken from her in front of everyone, her safe space. When Jacob and his mom came by 2 days later, Lily didn't come out of her room. I explained what had happened. Jacob's mom was livid. She's done this before, she said. Last year, she tried to ban my son from using a phone in the common room. Said, screens are antisocial. We thought it was just her being old-fashioned. But this is too far. Would you be willing to speak to the board? I asked. She nodded immediately. It's time someone did. That week, I began to hear quiet murmurs from other neighbors. Some stopped me on my walks. One dad muttered, I heard what happened, my kid was there. We're behind you. Another said, I didn't see it myself, but I've heard she's been controlling for years. But not everyone agreed. Some avoided eye contact. One woman whispered that maybe children shouldn't be using laptops at public events anyway. Someone left an anonymous note on my windshield. It's a shame what happened, but maybe don't let her depend on it so much. The neighborhood was divided, but for the first time, some of the silence was cracking. And when the cracks appear, the truth starts to seep through. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was focused. Filing the formal complaint had only been the first step. The HOA's response, sterile, measured, quietly threatening, told me exactly what I needed to know. They wanted it to go away. Quietly, without disruption, without acknowledgement. They weren't protecting Lily. They were protecting themselves. But I had no intention of letting this disappear. So I started digging. First, I called Lily's school and requested written documentation confirming that her laptop was classified as an assistive device. Within 24 hours, I had a signed statement from her teacher and her IEP coordinator outlining how her digital tools weren't just educational, they were essential. Then I contacted her therapist. She'd been working with Lily for almost 3 years and had no trouble putting her thoughts into words. Lily's laptop is not a distraction, it's her bridge to the world. Taking it away is akin to taking away a wheelchair from a child who can't walk. That quote alone was going into the report. But what surprised me most wasn't the professionals, it was the neighbors. People started to talk. A mom named Erin, who I barely knew beyond waving across the street, texted me out of the blue. "Hey, Michelle, just heard what happened. I think I have something you might want to see." We met the next morning. She handed me a USB drive and said, "It's from our Ring camera. 2 weeks ago, my son was drawing on his coloring tablet outside the pool. Mrs. Thornton walked by, and well, you'll see. Back home, I plugged it in and watched. The video showed a sunny afternoon, kids splashing at the edge of the pool, a few parents lounging nearby. Aaron's son, maybe 7 years old, was sitting on a bench by the fence, focused on a small tablet with crayons and a stylus. Then came Mrs. Thornton, same linen blazer, same clipboard. She slowed as she passed him, paused, then leaned down and snatched the tablet out of his hands. The boy jumped, startled. Mrs. Thornton muttered, not knowing the camera was capturing her clearly, "Screens are poison. Go play like a real child." She set the tablet beside him. Hard, not quite throwing it, but close. He looked around, unsure if he'd done something wrong. The adults nearby didn't intervene. I watched that clip 4 times. Every time, my jaw clenched tighter. I started asking around, gently, quiet questions to people I trusted. The stories came slowly, like peeling back layers of quiet resentment. One teenager, Michael, said she once knocked his phone out of his hand when he was playing music on a bench by the tennis court. "She told me I was polluting public space," he said, shaking his head. "It was lo-fi, not even loud." A young mother said Mrs. Thornton had reported her daughter, who has ADHD, for being too loud on her iPad during a Sunday morning walk. She said the screen made her hyperactive. It was a math game. Every incident was subtle, small enough not to be criminal, but the pattern was clear. Mrs. Thornton wasn't just anti-technology. She was anti-kid, at least the kind who didn't fit her mold. I compiled it all. I printed photos, emails, statements. I added stills from the Ring footage. I formatted everything into a timeline, not an isolated incident, a documented history of targeted harassment and property interference. I knew I needed one more thing, a tipping point. It came from the HOA secretary herself. She emailed me privately. "Off the record, I've always thought Mrs. Thornton was a bit extreme. We actually had a complaint filed against her 2 years ago for pouring soda on a teen's laptop during a pool party. The board dismissed it at the time because there was no proof. But now there's proof." She ended the email with, "If this comes to a hearing, I'll speak." That was all I needed. I printed everything, clipped it into a thick folder, and titled it Evidence, Pattern of Harassment and Abuse, Mrs. Evelyn Thornton. Then I submitted it to the HOA board, every single member. No more silence. No more cover-ups. No more warnings disguised as rules. This time, the whole community would see what had been hidden behind concerned citizen language and tight, cold smiles for far too long. ChatGPT said, "The emergency HOA meeting was held in the clubhouse on a Thursday evening, but it might as well have been a courtroom. Every seat was filled, parents, teens, elderly couples who usually never left their porches. People came with curiosity, anger, fear, and something rarer, hope. Word had spread fast. People knew what had happened to Lily. They knew about the video, and now they wanted to see what the board would do about it." Mrs. Thornton was already seated at the front when I walked in, her expression unreadable behind her pale pink lipstick and neatly pressed suit. But her posture, shoulders tight, hands clasped just a little too hard, gave her away. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. I stepped up to the podium when called, opened my folder, and began. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I told the truth, clearly, calmly, and with undeniable proof. I showed the photo of Lily's water-damaged laptop. I read a brief excerpt from her school statement confirming It was classified as assistive technology. I presented a letter from her therapist emphasizing the emotional harm of the incident. And then I played the ring footage, Mrs. Thornton snatching a coloring tablet from a 7-year-old and muttering that screens are poison. The room was silent, except for the sound of breathing and the occasional gasp. Then I turned to the board. This is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern, one that you ignored until now. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here for accountability. The HOA president leaned forward, speaking into the mic with visible discomfort. Thank you, Michelle. We've reviewed all submitted evidence. After a private vote, the board has decided to remove Mrs. Thornton from her role on the HOA effective immediately. She is also prohibited from initiating contact with any minor in the community or filing unilateral complaints against families without board oversight. There was a murmur of relief. A few people clapped quietly. Mrs. Thornton stood. This is absurd. I was trying to help. You're all too blinded by tech culture to see what it's doing to your children. But her words landed flat. The room no longer feared her. People saw her now, not as a protector of values, but as a bully with a clipboard. One by one, parents spoke up. Stories spilled out, small, quiet acts of control, ignored until they weren't. And just like that, the silence that had protected her for years shattered. Justice didn't roar. It rang out clear, calm, and finally loud enough. ChatGPT said, "The following morning after the HOA vote, I found a small box on our doorstep. Inside was a brand new laptop, sleek, silver, still wrapped in plastic. No note, no sender. Just a sticky tab on the screen protector that read, 'For Lily.'" I stood there holding it, stunned, tears prickling behind my eyes. Later, I'd find out it was a group gift, contributions from several neighbors, including Jacob's mom, Erin, and even the teenager Mrs. Thornton once accused of polluting the park with lo-fi. Quiet voices, finally speaking. Lily didn't say much when I handed it to her. She just stared at it, then at me. Her fingers hovered over the keys like she wasn't sure she was allowed to touch it. I nodded gently. "It's yours," I said. "You're safe now." She powered it on, slowly, reverently. Her eyes lit up with that quiet spark I hadn't seen in weeks. Then she opened her drawing app, pulled out her stylus, and just like that, she began again. Not from where she left off. From somewhere braver. Bolder. Jacob came over that evening with a thumb drive in his hand and a wide grin on his face. "I made her a desktop wallpaper," he said shyly. We loaded it together. And when it lit up across her new screen, Lily gasped softly. It was a picture of the two of them, stick figures, side by side, under a rainbow of pixel stars. Above it, he'd typed in bold block letters, "You're not alone." Lily stared at it for a long time before typing back on her screen, "I never was." A few weeks later, we helped her start a digital art blog. We posted her forest drawings, her dreamlike animal portraits, even a few short comic strips about a girl, and her talking laptop. The blog began to grow. People left kind comments. One woman emailed asking if Lily would be open to illustrating a children's story about inclusion. Slowly, my daughter came back to life, not just behind a screen, but beyond it. Stronger, more confident, more herself. What Mrs. Thornton tried to break didn't shatter. It bloomed. Because even in a world where cruelty can hide behind community rules, there are people willing to reach out, speak up, and remind a little girl that her voice, however it comes, is still hers to use. And now, she's using it louder than ever. ChatGPT said, "When people fear what they don't understand, they try to control it. They label it wrong, disruptive, or unnatural. But what they're really saying is, this makes me uncomfortable." And too often, that discomfort turns into control, into silence, into harm. Lily's story isn't just about a laptop being destroyed. It's about a world that still treats disabled kids as if they should shrink to fit someone else's rules. It's about a community that looked the other way until a child's spirit was nearly extinguished in front of them. And it's about what happens when we finally say, "No more. No adult, no HOA, no neighbor, no authority, has the right to destroy what helps a child thrive, especially not out of ignorance or worse, cruelty disguised as concern. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, to be less visible, to stop being you, know this: your story matters. Your truth deserves to be heard. Here at the HOA Stories, we don't just tell stories. We expose injustice. We uplift voices that are too often silenced. We shine a light on what happens behind the hedges and HOA meeting doors, and we remind you that you're not alone. Backhand index pointing right. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and join a growing community of people who believe in standing up when it counts. Because every voice deserves space, every child deserves protection, and every story, especially the hard ones, deserves to be told. This is the HOA Stories.